the 4-part series of worshiping in weird places. Worshiping in weird places. Where have believers found themselves worshiping that didn't just feel right to them compared to where they had been? Today, the first section of worshiping in weird places is going to be with Moses. When those who followed God, the Hebrews of the time, were in Egypt, they were not in their home location. In fact, they were in slavery. They were enslaved in a foreign land, in a foreign place that did not worship their God. So how do you worship in weird places? How do you worship in a place that feels so foreign, so unwelcoming, so oppressive? We look at what went on with the Israelites, in particular with Moses during that time. Moses was out as one of these people of Israel who were in Egypt. He was out shepherding the flock of his father-in-law, and he took this flock across the desert in a normal, everyday life. Now, certainly he was not actively making bricks and building things, but he was actively part of an oppressed and enslaved culture. So out he was, shepherding these flocks, and he saw a bush that was on fire but not consumed. This is in Exodus 3, if you're looking for the burning bush chapter. He said, I must go over and look at this remarkable sight. Why isn't this bush burning up? When the Lord saw that Moses had gone over to look, God called out to him from the bush, Moses, Moses, here I am, he answered. Do not come closer, he said. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he continued, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Church, there was Moses in slavery as a people that had been oppressed. In fact, he was in such a bad place that he was not in the thick of the cities. No, he had already caused enough of a name for himself that it wasn't safe for him to be in not where the Egyptians were. So there was Moses in this situation, and where was God? Was God up in the heavens, distant from his people? No. Was God absent, waiting for them to toughen out through what they were going through, and once they became able to worship more effectively, God would show up? No. Where was God? In the midst of where God's people were suffering, there was God. In the midst of where God's people were, there was God. God did not leave them alone. In fact, in a time that was particularly dark and difficult for God's people, God showed up and made God's self more known than maybe they had certainly seen in their lifetimes, but maybe in the memory of their whole people group. God showed up big in the burning bush. God showed up big, speaking to God's own people, including Moses, in a time that was dark and difficult, a time of enslavement and oppression. This is what God did. God didn't distance or pull away. God pushed in closer. When the people of God are worshiping in weird places, worshiping in places that feel so separate from where they would want to be, so separate from how they would like to live, God pushes closer. God leans in and God shows up. Church, this is the God we worship. The God that points out that you can never be too far gone, too captive too enslaved, too distant from where you'd like to be for God to show up, seek you, and find you. Oh, church, we worship a God that comes near. Let us pray. Oh, Lord God, we thank you that you are the Lord that leans in. You are the Lord that pushes near. You are the Lord that does not leave us, but rather you are the Lord that appears so grand, so glorious, and so when we need you. We thank you for the character of who you are, God. God in God's self. We praise you and worship you.